Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, whatever dimension you resonate from. Welcome to another exciting episode of Ancient Mysteries Unearthed Fireside Chat. I'm Brandon James Sim, your co-host, and join us today as we venture into the realm of celestial forces and their potential influence on human history. Join us as we dive into the captivating concept of a solar-induced Dark Age, inspired by the pioneering research of Dr. Robert M. Schoch. We embark on a journey that challenges our understanding of the past and explores the profound impact of solar events on ancient civilizations. In this episode, we'll explore the hypothesis that colossal solar disruptions could have plunged humanity into periods of darkness and upheaval, shrouding our ancestors in an age of mystery and transformation. Drawing upon the compelling evidence and geological references, we'll dive into the intriguing connections between solar activity and the rise and fall of ancient civilizations. So, gather around the fireside with us as we shed light on the fascinating concept of solar-induced dark ages. Welcome to Ancient Mysteries Fireside Chats. I'm Brandon James Sim. This is your other co-host, Chris Noble. Chris, how are you today, sir?
I'm awesome, Brandon. Thank you so much, my friend. Beautiful intro as always. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. It's going to be fun today. We're talking about a very important subject, which is pretty much what's led us to where we are today. And these solar events are something that we still don't fully understand. And the really interesting thing is that when we start to look at these details that we're going to get into today about the solar-induced dark age that Dr. Schoch talks about, but also what this solar event would even have looked like from our perspective on planet Earth, all of a sudden, a lot of these ancient symbols and a lot of ancient rock art and these ancient depictions and symbols we see start to make more sense, and they stop looking kind of abstract and weird, and all of a sudden start describing potentially an incredibly important visual and scientific event that potentially led to the destruction of the last great civilization here on planet Earth. So this is going to be pretty fascinating.
So, Chris, my understanding of this, I'm a little ignorant to this solar-induced dark age. However, my imagination fires off because I do know that back in the late 1800s or early 1900s, there was a solar event that was so large that the telegraph lines actually fused to a lot of the rail lines. They used to have them underneath the rail lines. It was just a easier way to lay down that. And I know that in today's setting, if that happened, it would cause massive disruptions. And it's not an if, but a when situation that our sun is going to kick like a bucking mule and send something our way that is going to screw up a lot of our technology today. I saw a beautiful little meme of like man creates, electricity. Man uses electricity to create computers. Man creates computers, thus creating AI. AI enslaves humanity. Solar flare disrupts AI, and then man worships sun god. And it's like, it just showed like kind of humanity doing full circle. So I'm wondering, is this what we're going to delve into today? Are we under the impression that perhaps, with certain depictions in Egypt, we see light bulbs and things like that? Are we talking about having electronics in the past and having that high civilization that might echo what we see today?
Yeah, well, that's a really cool meme. Thank you for bringing that up, and for the audience, like that's basically describing this in a sense the cycles that this planet goes through all the time, and in doing so, we as human beings go through these cycles all the time. And the last episode where Brandon was actually not on the show and I was hosting it myself, we were looking through Michael Cremo's work, and he talks about human antiquity, ancient, way older than we are led to believe, ages of human beings. He's able to trace human origins back to millions of years ago. So if that is indeed true, think about how many cycles we've gone through as a species on this planet. And I think that our civilizations in the past have been wiped out, reset again, and there's different things that happen to reset those civilizations. And what we're going to look at today with the solar-induced dark age, big solar flare events, this could be one of the many ways in which civilization has been destroyed in the past. And when you were mentioning the Carrington event, which happened in the 1800s, that event, if it happened today, would be absolutely catastrophic, like you said. And so it looks like the ancients absolutely had technology that involved electricity, although it may have been a little bit different than what we see today. And yeah, absolutely, it would have been completely and utterly destroyed. But the thing is that the event that happened, like what we believe happened about 12,500 years ago, which ended the last ice age, that event was so beyond what happened in the Carrington event in the 1800s. This event that happened 12,500 years ago, far more deadly. So much so that the plasma bursts and that would be hitting the planet Earth would look like big lightning bolts, like way bigger than a typical lightning bolt, but it's plasma coming from these solar outbursts from the sun, just hitting the planet at thousands of degrees Celsius. So you're not even having to worry about an EMP blast knocking out electronics. That's the least of your concerns. You're having something that's going to melt things, like it's going to melt rock. And that's where we get something called vitrification, which is glass that's rock encountering high heat, which then turns to glass. We have evidence of that all over the planet, including Egypt. Actually, when we were at the Great Pyramid, Dr. Schoch in our group, we were picking up in the sand these balls of glass, which were just stone, vitrified, rock. Which the only way that that happens is through high heat. So he was looking even in Egypt and showing us evidence of this. Probably was one of the blast sites that got hit by this solar, this massive solar flare. So basically, we're going to go into the details of not only what Dr. Schoch's talking about and what that looks like in terms of our history for the last 12,000 roughly years, but I've pulled up a bunch of videos to try to show you guys what this could have looked like, and also to show the symbols that the ancients have used to depict what we think was a massive solar, not just a solar induced dark age, but a solar event that would have been so cataclysmic. It baffles your mind. You can't even imagine how crazy this could be. So we're going to dive into a lot of cool examples.
Now this lines up with the flood.
Yeah.
And because I know in a lot of the Veda texts and and ancient texts, they talk about the rise and fall of humanity, and they almost use different elements to suggest that, one was through fire, one was through water. And whenever I think fire, I think of certainly today, if we had a solar flare today with our power grid, especially here in North America, you'll see we have transponders and things like that. They would explode, which would be, and they're full of oil. So they would literally rain fire down. Our nuclear power plants would overload, overshort. The backup generators would be gone. So they would be melting down as well. So fire would be certainly something from it. So I had no idea that we were lining this up with the flood. So I'm so excited, Chris. Why don't you take us right into it and just let's tantalize our audience and get right into some trouble here.
Yep, I love it. So I'm going to show you Dr. Schoch, his website, which I highly recommend. He's got great articles that he's put up here. Lots and lots of research. Of course, this is going to be in the show notes below. Check it out. I'm just going to do a very brief dive on this stuff, and then we'll go into some videos. So one of his articles, which is basically titled SIDA, that's his acronym for Solar Induced Dark Age. This is Dr. Schoch's theory, and it was really cool being with him in Egypt. He's a good friend now and good friend of the channel. And he really presents some compelling evidence. He's a geologist, remember. At the end of the day, he's coming at this with a geological perspective, which is pretty amazing when you're using geology to look into the ancient past, because it doesn't really lie. It's kind of just there. And we get to use that knowledge to honestly uncover a lot of incredible things. So basically, we're looking right now at what I believe is also a pretty accurate depiction of the last 12,500 years. Okay, so we've got today, the year 2023, okay, on the far right, and then you go back 12,500 years, 10,500 BC, 10,000 BC roughly, and this is the end of the last ice age, which Dr. Schoch believes that just before that was when the Great Sphinx was built and Göbekli Tepe. I think those are actually more even older sites. Certainly the Great Sphinx, maybe Göbekli Tepe is about that old. But regardless,
well, and just to reiterate too, like the ice age, there were periods and places on Earth, especially around the equator, that were free of ice. Even here in North America, there's there's a few geological formations here that they talk about having civilization well into the Ice Age, up at higher points and using them as highways to get around glaciers. So there was civilization existing in the Ice Age, although it might have been more difficult to do. It was there. So
Actually, not even that much, not even that difficult, because around the equator, basically around places like Egypt, Egypt would have been very habitable. It would have actually been a lush, almost jungle-like paradise, to be honest. So, there were a lot of very habitable places. The Ice Age, even for myself, when I think of the Ice Age, I have to remind myself that it wasn't covered with ice everywhere. It was actually quite hospitable, habitable in a lot of parts of the planet, just large sheets of ice on the poles. But yeah, in the middle, lots of people were thriving, and civilizations could easily have thrived, no problem. So
well, if you think about it too, like Mercury, even NASA scientists talk about how near the poles in Mercury, that close to the sun, is actually possibly a habitual zone because
yeah,
it's too hot. Well, you go to the poles, right? Too cold, you go to the equator. So
yeah, I think we're just redefining how habitable not only our planet but other planets potentially can be, and that's a whole other podcast right there. But as you can see in the middle here, so we've got the end of the last ice age, 12,000 years ago approximately. Okay, and then you've got this period of thousands of years, like 5,000 to 6,000 years, and then the traditional beginning of civilization, which we've talked about in previous episodes, more of a restarting of civilization. I don't deny that not much was going on in these thousands of years. Why though? Well, with the solar induced dark age theory, it gives a lot more evidence and explanation as to why humans were basically kind of not extinct, but essentially in hiding for thousands of years. Well, that's because this solar event was not the only one. There was this big one that ended the last ice age. Yes. Well, this is part of the theory at least, because there's other theories like the asteroid theory and other impact theories. But for the solar theory of how the last ice age was ended, that was a big event, massive event. However, afterwards, there were other events of pretty significant size. They were smaller, but significant and highly destructive. And they were happening for thousands of years after the end of the last ice age. So this is where we got the solar induced dark age. You got thousands of years all of a sudden where there's nobody. However, in the oral traditions and some of even the written history, and of course just the archaeology that we've uncovered, we find a lot of dwelling in caves and underground. We've got the underground cities in Turkey, India, and all around the world. We find more and more underground dwellings. But then, of course, we all know about people living in caves, all the cave art we see. But what's really interesting is to now know, oh, they weren't just living in caves because that's how primitive we were, living in caves. No. We were living in caves because we were surviving. We were surviving thousands of years of solar storms that were pummeling the planet. The surface was almost completely inhabitable for thousands of years. Okay, if we're going with this theory, and there's again, look into the evidence that Robert presents. We're going to show a video of a bit of a lecture right after this, where he's going to get into the details. So I'll basically just wanted to show, this is kind of the timeline that we're looking at. This is, when the end of the last ice age happened, we had this whole period that was continuing to be just the planet being pummeled by solar flares. We had to survive. Even advanced cultures could not exist really under those conditions. It's completely inhabitable. This planet was going through a massive shift. So anyway, here we are today. We restarted civilization roughly 6,000 years ago, and this is the theory of the solar induced dark age. Now, this is another part of a different article on Dr. Schoch's website. I'm pulling up, it's a little low resolution here, but it's going to show up again in the video that I'll play after this. These are pictographs and symbols found all over the world that Robert has taken photos of and then juxtaposed, put together side by side with solar plasma events. And all of a sudden you start to see some incredible similarities. So on the left hand side, okay, we've got this plasma event when it's photographed here. It's really low res, so it's hard to kind of see. But then you've got these pictographs that start to they look kind of random, right? But all of a sudden, zoom as much as I can, you're starting to see similarities. There's these pictographs here in Rongo, and those look very similar to what some of these plasma events photographed or computer simulations look like on the left. Some of the even better ones are here on the right. These ones are quite compelling. So you've got conceptual artwork and conceptual drawings of these large solar events, plasma events in a laboratory that they've recreated, and this is literally what they look like. It's like almost looks like a figure with their arm out, like a head in the middle, body like stick figure, right? And these two kind of balls, sort of ball-like orb things on either side of the human, very symmetrical, okay? And then you look over to these petroglyphs and look at the petroglyphs. It looks like identical to this plasma event. And solar flares are plasma events. And so all of a sudden, these figures with their arms up, like, almost like when you're like, stick them up, put your hands up, and someone puts their hands up like that. That's what these figures look like. The same, but like opposite of their legs pointing downwards versus their arms pointing upwards, and then a sort of stick figure in the center. This is a very common pictograph that is found all around the world. And now that we can compare them to what an actual plasma event, and not just a typical plasma event, a plasma event of the magnitude that would have happened 12,500 years ago, all of a sudden, these pictographs are starting to look exactly like what this plasma event that we can see in laboratories is. The closest thing we've been able to recreate it with. This is what it looks like in the laboratories. This is what we see in pictographs. Very, very similar. So were they actually like drawing or trying to carve into rock what they were seeing in the sky? That's basically one of the main symbolic theories that Robert presents. So I'm going to play his lecture here. I'm going to probably play most of it. I'll stop it, but there's a lot of really good stuff in here. And then afterwards, I'm going to show some videos of what solar events could look like, and also what those plasma balls that we see in like places like the Science Center and stuff, just to try to give you guys like an idea of what this could have looked like at the time. What are we going to say, Brandon?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Chris, it's just so interesting that when we see pictographs, and we've seen pictographs on some of our canoe trips, and they're faded, and we try and interpret them. And, the number one thing I hear when people look at pictographs or cave drawings is that they're not very impressive. That, oh, we call that art. It's a stick figure. Like really, look how bad they are. But it's interesting that it's the power of interpretation, because when you look at it and you see a stick figure, and then someone else, a high scientist, goes, hey, wait a minute, that might not be a person, that might be a plasma event. And then all of a sudden we're looking at it and saying, it's not that it's primitive, it's actually they're trying to convey high science. To one person that might be ludicrous, but to the right person, it's genius. So it's just so interesting to think about how critical it is, how important it is to have an open mind and an open eye and an open heart to look and really give respect to our heritage globally, for events like this. Because why would there be cave drawings? Even though, that's the one thing that I always think about too, Chris, is I'm like, okay, so, the caveman idea. I don't really buy into the caveman idea of Ugg and his buddies with clubs,
Yeah.
And when you think about sheltering in place, and how, like, oh my God, it's like a solar lockdown, and thinking about how the past few years have been on us, and like how we felt like we were stuck. And then thinking about, really that event, and being like, it could be thousands of years of ancestors being stuck. It's just incredible to see that interpretation and the power of interpretation. And it's just so profound to me. That's all.
It's absolutely incredible. And, you get these amazing oral traditions all around the world of a time when everyone had to seek shelter. Everyone. Yes, there was a global flood that they're seeking shelter from as well, because with the solar event, it's going to melt those ice caps. And again, when you got thousands of degrees of heat smashing into the planet everywhere, it's going to melt stuff instantaneously. And of course it did. And that's where you get the Great Flood from. But also after the Great Flood, which was already devastating enough, you've still got these solar events, like massive lightning bolts, plasma lightning bolts, just smoking the planet, burning anything around it. kind of like a nuclear bomb, to be honest, like just about as devastating. So now you've got, like you said, thousands of years where people are actually hiding out and surviving, and you get these interesting stories from, like, the Hopi, for example. The ant people came from the inner earth and saved them and brought them into their shelter within the inner earth, because also surviving strictly in just a cave for thousands of years, that's very challenging. You got logistics, like where are you going to get your food, and how are you going to have people, like, remain sort of sanitary too, and like with obvious things, just cleanliness and bodily, like defecation and all that stuff, right?
Sanity as well. I mean,
Sanity, things like that. Could we have even survived for that long in a purely a cave dwelling, or were we living in some of these inner earth dwellings that had civilization, and we were able to be a bit more, well, civilized, or at least a bit more, basically it would allow us to actually extend our lifespan and not go crazy in a cave for thousands of years. I do believe some of these stories are absolutely possible, that we may have had other help and people or beings that brought us into these sanctuaries. And so lots of theories, but the thing is that these are worldwide. It's a global phenomenon. You hear about this all around the world, and we're going to watch now a video with Dr. Robert Schoch where he talks about more of this evidence. And basically it's written in the actual stone structures that we find, and it's also in all of the folklore examples of solar outbursts from the sun. So let's take a watch and a listen.
The Moai, and you have all kinds of incredible mysteries there. Notice the Moai with the hands in the navel. Just as a side note, you get something very similar at Göbekli Tepe, I think. But these are some of the petroglyphs. Notice the hands. We were just hearing about the hand shape. And you have comparisons. These are just some comparisons between Easter Island Petra and Göbekli Tepe. But what you have on Easter Island, which is really very strange and mysterious, is this so-called indigenous, indigenous script, indigenous something. This is a modern reconstruction on a monument outside the governor's office, but the Rongo script. Have people heard about that? It's on wooden tablets, only about 24, 26 or so. People argue about the authenticity of some of them. Are known at this point. They're inscribed on these wooden tablets, and these have never been, to this moment, unless we're right about it, really been properly interpreted or deciphered. So we're looking at these. We've come back from Easter Island. It was sort of like a little break from thinking about other things. We're looking at, but I can't get my mind off of, why do civilizations disappear? Why did the Ice Age end? We watch Symbols of an Alien Sky, and Katie says to me, well, those Rongo characters, they sort of look like the plasma petroglyphs. And we're starting to look at them, and I've got to say, I tend to be skeptical about things at first. And I say, I didn't even want to watch it again. I mean, no insult to you. But I'd seen Symbols of an Alien Sky before. I found it really interesting, but she insisted, we should watch it again. Good to relax the brain. And here we're looking at this, and these are Rongo glyphs. See them there? This is another one here, another one here. And we believe that as you start looking at this, you get the same imagery, you get the same forms very consistently. I've got to say that, it's just been crazy, the diverse interpretations, the very varying, disparate, trying to interpret Rongo. If you look at the literature about it, which I've read all of the literature I can get my hands on, I'm not finding any of it convincing, but it does make sense to me that these glyphs record or were inspired by these plasma configurations. And I just throw this, well, not throw it in, this is another thing. It has been suggested by Tony Peratt and his group that Nazca, the Nazca lines may record Well, he didn't really get into the glyphs, the huge glyphs on the surface that you have there, but you start looking at these. We're looking at Rongo Rongo. There's a petroglyph of Easter Island with the hand symbol, and well, you have that Nazca too. I'm wondering, does this all start to tie together again as a unifying theme?
The ancient Egyptians.
So it's actually, this commercial break comes at a good time, because the thing with the hands, we're gonna play some video later, and we're gonna play some video later where we look at those plasma balls. You know, when you're at, like, at least where I'm from, Toronto, Canada originally, I grew up going to the science center all the time, and at those science centers you have those plasma balls. You put your hands on them. Sometimes your hair, you know, gets all staticky and it stands up. But those plasma balls, when you put your hands on them, the plasma gravitates right to your fingertips, right? So sometimes, you know, with those depictions of the hands, like, think about it. If you were people that didn't know what these things were, you're going to draw them in a way to kind of bring some sense to it. So using the human body as a, let's say, a blueprint to explain what you're seeing in the sky with these plasma outbursts, you could use hands to, in a way, depict almost like forked lightning or plasma bursts that are coming down like in multiple, you know, lines. You could be using your hands in a sense to depict that. So, you know, you can look at these as human figures or human-like figures depicting a solar event that we're seeing with these plasma outbursts. So that's one thing to consider. And now Robert's going to talk about some of the actual folklore here on Easter Island. And it's very compelling because it all refers to the sky and events happening in the sky.
Aspects of this, and I realize what time it is, so I'm paying attention to time, but you look at other aspects of this, for instance, some of the legends, and I can't go into this great detail, but Easter Island, there's a legend. I want to read this. In the days of Roko Roko Hitau, the sky fell. What are they referring to by the sky falling? It fell from above onto the earth. The people cried out, the sky has fallen in the days of King Roko Roko Hitau. He took hold, he waited a given time, the sky returned, it went away, and it stayed up there again. So could this be referring to plasma changes in the sky? So we suggest, Katie and I, that maybe the Rongo Rongo tablets are recording some kind of, if it's solar plasma outbursts, or maybe in the context here, other type of plasma configurations, cataclysms, geomagnetic storms. Could it be recording this? In fact, when you look at the glyphs, they seem to, in many cases, morph from one form to another, as if they're recording like a film, different configurations in the sky. We suggest that maybe it's what we could call scientific text, or, you know, at least the original ones. Like anything, some of this could have been lost later, it could have been reused, it could have been tried to turn into some type of language later, but I'm suggesting for the origin of these glyphs. Could it be that they're recording some kind of plasma events? Whether it's a solar ejection, something like the Carrington event, or something much more dramatic. And could this be the end of the last ice age? Could a plasma event like that be what caused the end of the last ice age? It would come down, it would hit, it would incinerate the surface of the earth, it would leave only large stone structures, which is what you have surviving. It's now been documented very recently, within the last couple of years, that so many Neolithic structures from around the end of the last ice age, they are associated with underground tunnels and caves, artificial caves. Why would you dig those? Why would you dig into, or not dig, carve into rock? Spend tremendous amount of time and energy to do that. Well, if you're trying to survive a cataclysm from above, literally fire coming down, it would create deluges, huge floods, biblical floods, evaporating water, evaporating ice. It would have to precipitate out again. You're causing ice sheets to melt, sea levels are rising, earthquakes, volcanic activity increased. You find around the world, and I just mentioned this, a couple of examples, for instance, Easter Island, these low, thick stone houses. They're almost like fallout shelters or protective shelters. Also, even on Easter Island, they used the artificial caves heavily. Give you just an example. You have things like Mesa Verde, I don't know, were they just undercliffs for the fun, or was that, in some cases, I'm not saying all of this would go back that far, but is it a collective memory? Is it a memory that you have to protect yourself for what may come in the future? Back to Göbekli Tepe, were they seeking to protect themselves? Was this plasma coming down? Was it literally burning, incinerating? Did they want to protect this structure? I throw it out there. And could this be the cause of the great rains, ultimately, that eroded the Sphinx? Could it push this all back? The geology does not deny that it could be that old. It's compatible. And again, Perrott and his group have questioned the date. Well, as I said, here I'm suggesting that maybe at least one of these major events, because there may have been more than one, could have been at 9700 BCE by conventional dating. I realize not everyone accepts the conventional dating here, and that this could have wiped everything out. And I've got 2 more slides because I know I'm running out of time. Could it happen again? This is something that people ask me. This was published in Astronomy and Astrophysics. Similar things have been published in Nature, for instance. So again, this is good conventional peer review. In this case, we're looking at a reconstruction of solar activity. This is the end of the last ice age. So incredible mood swings, if you would, of the sun, and very high solar activity, and it sort of declines. This is the end of the last ice age, 7,000 or so BCE. Declines, we have lull. Notice that we're ramping up again. In the last century or less, there's a lot of indication things are happening, things are getting active again. So I would say be prepared, although I'm not, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but who knows? If something hits tomorrow, you heard it here, right?
So there you go. That's Dr. Schoch, Robert, great guy, awesome human being. Love Robert, and his research is great because he's actually quite a skeptical guy, and he's now well known in the alternative community, certainly with alternative history and whatnot. He's all over many TV shows and whatnot. And yet, at the end of the day, this guy, knowing him now personally, he is very skeptical. He does not. I would say Brandon and myself, we definitely latch onto these ideas much faster. We're like, yeah, that sounds totally believable. Let's do it. He's not, and yet he's still coming to these conclusions because the facts and the evidence point him in that direction. And he's also a good enough and brave enough scientist to admit when the evidence speaks loudly, he listens. So pretty interesting stuff. Let's take a look now at what on earth is a solar flare. What does this look like coming from the sun? And then what is it going to look like when it hits the planet? Because this is really, now we want to get into a perspective of what were we as the human species really witnessing. So the first video here is going to be more like what is a solar flare coming from the sun. And then we're just going to watch a couple more videos with examples of what that would look like from our perspective here on planet Earth.
To the next one.
I apologize. This one is what it sounds like. This is what, okay, I'm going to play this one first, and then I'm going to play the video that I just played by accident there, because actually it's really cool. They have recordings of what a solar flare sounds like, which is actually quite interesting. But here is what a solar flare really is.
Coronal mass ejections are huge bubbles of gas threaded through with magnetic field lines. We got a taste of how powerful such an event can be in July 2012. The NASA Stereo A spacecraft recorded 2 small coronal mass ejections, followed by a Carrington scale blast. Had this event occurred a week earlier, it might have hit us, with catastrophic effects. Scientists used it as a test case for understanding the behavior of Earth's magnetosphere under a powerful solar onslaught. A computer model shows a normal day. The solar wind flows continuously past the Earth, distorting its magnetic field and pulling it around the back in a tail-like structure. A typical coronal mass ejection pushes Earth's field in and lengthens its tail. The magnetosphere remains largely intact. A Carrington scale event is a different story. It severely compresses Earth's magnetic field while packing the boundary with plasma.
Wow. Let's see if I just want to pull up that image. Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
so it makes this look more like a comet.
yeah.
And it comes like there's no shield anymore.
Yeah, we've lost our shield. That's really what our ionosphere and the magnetic sphere around our planet that Nikola Tesla shows. It's like that toroidal shape that you're seeing here. That is our protection. And when a solar flare hits, it decimates our protection. When it's a light solar flare, it looks like the Northern Lights. It looks like Aurora Borealis. And we got some video of that I want to just, remind people of what this looks like on a more tame level. But quickly, I want to show, like what you're seeing here is what happened in the 1800s. If that were to happen today, catastrophic. And what we just heard there is in 2012, we just missed one by a week. That could have been quite catastrophic. And it's funny, we had all those, this hysteria around 2012 and the end of the Mayan calendar. And I've heard of a couple of events that supposedly happened that year where we really did miss it. Like we weren't far off from the apocalyptic predictions on 2012. Like we really did just, we are apparently kind of on borrowed time right now. So let's make the best of it, everybody. Let's make the best of this borrowed time that we're on. And I want to play now what I played before by accident, which is what does a solar flare sound like? We now have satellites that are orbiting really close to the sun, and they've captured some of these sounds. So I'm just going to play 2 of these recordings back. This is what a solar flare sounds like. Maybe this is just a small smidgen of what we were experiencing 12,000 years ago when we had it smashing into the planet. Seeing in the video here is actually what is I believe captured by the this satellite. It's really amazing. You can see the Milky Way and all these solar, what looks like particles, plasma particles flying by the camera there. So we're going to keep playing, and then the second sound is going to come in. It's a little different, but really sounds like wind, solar wind.
These almost unsettling audio recordings are called Whistler mode waves, and are pressure waves that are caused by energetic electrons bursting out of the sun's corona, the outermost part of the sun's atmosphere. The electrons follow magnetic field lines that stretch away from the sun out into the solar system's farthest regions, spinning around them like they're riding a carousel. When a plasma wave's frequency matches how frequently those electrons spin, they amplify one another. and to us it sounds like a chaotic roaring or a screaming hurricane.
Yeah, pretty interesting. So that's what it sounds like. It's pretty amazing. So now we know what it looks like when it's coming out of the sun. We know what a corona mass ejection is. We understand now what is coming out of the sun. I've heard it also described as the sun sweats, and when you're sweating and you work out and you kind of like move your head, like a wick of sweat flies off of your head, maybe hits your buddy at the gym. That's what corona mass ejection also is. It's kind of like this bead of sweat. It's like a little, electromagnetic, energy pulse. The only difference is it's like flying at you at the speed of light, basically, and it's usually larger than the size of planet Earth. So pretty big bead of sweat smashing into you. This is a quick video of the Carrington event, of what it would look like on just kind of slowly deteriorating Earth's ionosphere. I'm just going to quickly play that, and then we'll see some other cool stuff too.
Here we see the dramatic changes in Earth's magnetic field and the shape of the magnetopause as the CME passes Earth. But close to Earth, the magnetic field is largely unchanged. Earth is protected from the intense solar event. This is the case for a rather ordinary CME. In this example, a CME launched by an X3 flare from December 2006. But what would happen in the case of a more intense event, such as the Carrington event of 1859? With the aid of similar computer models as before, we can explore some of these possibilities. Here, a much stronger CME compresses the magnetic field between the Sun and Earth and generates more density in the bow shock, represented by darker red. The front of the magnetopause is pushed much closer to the Earth than usual. Even the field and plasma trailing behind the Earth are more strongly distorted.
So you can, again, you're just seeing this decimation of it's like our shield. The shield that protects us is just being destroyed. So what does it look like? Well, this is what obviously the aurora borealis looks like, right? I'm not gonna even put audio on this. This is just what we see on a normal level. This is what these smaller corona mass ejections, these solar flares, the energy that comes from the sun when it interacts with our ionosphere, especially in the north and south poles, you get this physical effect, which is known as the aurora borealis, the northern lights. And this is just a standard type of look of what we get when we're dealing with minor solar flares. So try to take this, and then I'm going to play a video of these plasma globes, balls, and see if it would almost be a combination of solar lights, aurora borealis meets this, those plasma ball things. Like, we would have shapes in the sky and images that, again, really blow our minds, and also would make anyone around the world want to document it. They would want to make sure that we remember this incredible event that we would be witnessing in the sky. So just to show you this is just I thought a cool video of a guy running outside and looking at the northern lights. Just imagine you're running out the door and looking at these plasma things hitting the Earth. Just imagine how shocking that would be. Imagine seeing that. I mean, that's just beautiful.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Wow, look at the brightness on that.
Right? Like, that's what these things can really start to look like. So 2 more videos left. This is a really interesting video. David Talbot, he talks about some of these really interesting things that would also be happening in our sky due to, solar flares and other cosmic events that could create something that, once again, we would think is a mythological drawing or image, even a representation of an extraterrestrial, and yet it's actually a scientific phenomenon we see in the sky.
Well, what is that strange extraterrestrial looking figure rising above the horizon of Easter Island? It's actually an electric discharge formation. It was pointed out to me by Tony Peratt about 12 to 13 years ago, when he was one of the most distinguished plasma scientists on the planet. And when people come to the Thunderbolts channel on YouTube, sometimes they're looking for information on aliens and UFOs and so on, and they hit upon symbols of an alien sky, and they get something much different. All right, so to pose the question, has our sky changed completely in the last few thousand years? We're addicted to projecting our sky on the past. But the truth of the matter is that the sky has changed dramatically, and these changes had a huge impact on the early cultures. And this is a testable claim. Formation seen in the ancient sky can actually be reconstructed by systematic use of a protocol for extracting reliable conclusions from global witnesses, despite the fact that the witnesses individually and locally are not reliable. This has to do with the convergence of global testimony on highly unique details where the convergence would not be possible in the absence of an extraordinary, globally witnessed provocation. So I hope everyone can kind of...
So what he's saying, right, is one person talking about this in one culture, okay, not that reliable, but when everyone across culture and even time are talking about these phenomenon, like, look at what, this looks similar to some of these shapes and some of these symbols that we've seen now, right, on Easter Island, Turkey, around the world. This looks like a massive being, and yet this also could have been some form of a celestial, some sort of solar event that looks like this massive celestial being almost. So you start to have to really question these ancient symbols and drawings of, were they purely myth? Were they just purely archetypes and avatars? Maybe. And also, could they have been actually depicting what they saw in the sky? So this last video, I'm just going to play it also on mute because it's a series of what actually is known as plasma art. Really interesting. Of course, everything you've been watching, folks, is going to be in the description below. Give us a little like and subscribe too while you're at it. We really appreciate it. And this plasma art is going to give you just more examples of what this could have looked like. Just, we're looking at this from a very small micro perspective. Bring it out, or a macro, excuse me, micro perspective. Just bring this out. Let's zoom out and imagine this on a planetary perspective, on planet Earth. See these bolts right now of plasma that you're seeing. What if that was coming onto the surface of our planet, and then certain like you put your hand on it, like you just saw there, and then all of a sudden maybe different parts of the Earth create these different shapes from the plasma because of different energies, different types of grounding, perhaps, I don't know. But either way, you can get a sense when you look at these plasma balls, just what kind of shapes, what kind of possibilities we could have been witnessing in the sky on our planet while all this incredible stuff was going on. You look at these different shapes. Now, I'll tell you a quick story. When I was in Egypt, we had a gentleman with us who was actually a plasma physicist. And after Robert gave his lecture on his solar induced dark age theory, and was showing the symbols, the plasma physicist, who is only a couple of years older than I am, came over to me and he's just like, yeah, I see that in the laboratory every day. I was like, really? And he looked at these ancient symbols again. He's like, he's like, yep, I know exactly what that is. That's a plasma phenomenon I see every day in the laboratory. So it just goes to show that there's still so much more that we don't understand about our history, about our past, and also about what was going on this planet. There's just so much mystery, and the ancients were always giving us clues. And as Robert said, I think so accurately, which is basically what we have now is this decimated, we've got the Great Pyramid, we've got these ruins all over the planet. Really all we have left are these ruins. Why? Because they were built out of stone. They're built like mountains, purely so that they could survive unbelievable cataclysms. And they did. They survived the biblical flood. They survived unbelievably incredible plasma outbursts that were just like thousands and thousands of degrees smashing into the planet. I mean, us as a species, think about what we've just moved through. And remember, we have epigenetic DNA. This means we can remember at least up to 40 to 50 generations before us in our own DNA. Do we have a collective memory of something so catastrophic, so cataclysmic, where we had to live underground for thousands of years? I believe that there's a part of us that remembers that because it's deeply traumatizing. You know, that would be something that we want to remember for a long time. And that's why we have these global myths of the end of a civilization, of a great flood, of a great cataclysm, and events that we saw in the sky. This is why people would try to remember this, and they would put it into myth so that by 2023, we're still talking about it and we can still have memory of this really, really important event in human history. So that's the end of this presentation here today, folks. Thank you so much for watching. And Brandon, I'd love to hear your final thoughts on all this pretty amazing information.
Well, you know what, Chris? It's just seeing everything and seeing how the Earth reacts to this. And the one part of all of this that is a reminder is that this is not only a likely scenario of our past, but a premonition perhaps of our future. And Dr. Robert Schoch, showing that the buildings underneath the ledges and everything, and saying, you know, I'm not saying this lines up with what I'm proposing, but a collective consciousness, a collective memory of perhaps premonition of our future. And it's just striking to think about that. And today also, you know, I do believe that our past, they might have been more advanced than us. I know here in North America, our electrical grids are actually quite vulnerable. So it's almost like a string of old Christmas lights. So to see that kind of thing and to think about a dark age, a solar induced dark age, and thinking about technology of the past, if we don't think about this as a way to kind of shape our future, that's what really stands out to me, is that we might be vulnerable to this now, and the catastrophic ramifications of such an event today would be just horrendous. And it's just so fascinating to think about the dark ages of the past. And I hope for all of us, we don't have to experience it in the future. But you know, the pictographs and everything is amazing, because once again, I always looked at that and I would fall victim to that. It's so primitive, but perhaps it is actually quite advanced. And it's just always such a wild ride to reinterpret our history, which I think is something that academics and more critical minds often will overstep and think that it's kind of that idea that the world has been discovered, that there's no more discovery to be made in our past. But really, our past is an elaborate tapestry that's almost like these ancient carvings that haven't been deciphered yet. And I really do think that places like this and other channels, some of our contributors and followers, and some of our places where we get our knowledge from, are great scholarly places to really expand our minds and to ask these questions. So I thank you so much for the presentation, Chris. You were on fire today, baby. I loved it.
Awesome.
And I apologize to our fan base here for not being on the last one there. I was just a bit busy before, but Chris, do you have a favorite comment from your time, or?
Yeah, I do. We're going to get into our favorite comments here, everybody. So I'll quickly share my screen again and pull up our, we love you very much. We really appreciate all the love we get on the channel here, and we're still in our beginning growing stages, and yet lots of interaction. You guys are already really chiming in. So I'm going to read from Dragon King X78. Thank you, Dragon. Right? Awesome YouTube name. Thank you, my friend. I'm sure, Dragon King writes, I'm sure we had many places in time when we had technology of some kind. It would not surprise me if we had learned how to harness electricity, sound, magnetism, gravity in the past. This was on the Sunken Civilizations episode. Thank you so much, Dragon King. And it's just nice to echo and hear confirmation from you that, you know, we really have lost a lot of what we once had. We still don't even quite know. Think about this. This is what one of the things I thought about when we were going through some of the videos today. Picture today, right now, wherever you are right now. Imagine all of a sudden a solar flare, unlike anything we've ever encountered, smashes in this planet. Everything that our normal day life goes to hell immediately, and we have to just run for survival. Okay, we go to a cave. Let's say you get to a cave somewhere. You've found your shelter. You've got your loved ones. Thank God they're with you. Okay, great. But now you're staying. You're trying to just survive. And you know that civilization is literally burning in front of you, and it's never going to be what it was again, and it's going to have to get reset. And you already know this. You're coming to this conclusion already in your mind, like, wow, this is a reset. What do you think you'd want to do? You'd probably start at some point going, oh my God, like my future generation of kids, my future generations, they got to know, like, what happened here? This is so amazing. This is so unbelievable in the whole history of humanity. I need to do something to try to preserve this. Okay, I'm in a cave. I'm just going to try to like chip something into a rock here and just, you know, try my best to describe what's been going on in the sky. I also know that in the future, they're probably not going to speak English or any of the languages right now, because we're going to have to reset all that too. So I'm going to have to do it in a way that's sort of describing something in a way that I don't even need to use a language to describe. I'm just going to draw it. I'm just going to draw what I see. And so you do it the crude kind of way. Even though we're sophisticated right now as a civilization, I would still be kind of chipping away crudely at something or trying to draw like some rock art in a cave and do the best I can. It's probably going to look like stick figures. And I'm going to try to show what I'm seeing in the sky. And I really believe that's what we're witnessing in a lot of these depictions all around the world, is just people trying their best with the given tools that they have. Even if they were sophisticated, when you're going through a global apocalypse, you're not going to have your iPhone necessarily handy, and if you do, it's going to be dead in a day or two. So you're going to have to go back to crude methods anyway. So that's why when we look back and we say, oh, that was so primitive, you don't know what the people of that time were dealing with. They could have been highly sophisticated as we are today and had to resort to primitive means because everything was destroyed, because we went through a cataclysm. So these are just the fun, you know, things that come up in my mind when we go through these things. Thank you, Dragon King X78. We appreciate you. We appreciate all the comments. And yeah, if you want to join our community, the community is growing. We're actually going to be adding a lot of cool stuff. I haven't even been talking to Brandon about this, but basically we're going to actually start adding in courses. I'm actually writing up a couple of really interesting courses on how to distill all this amazing knowledge from the ancient past and actually give it to you beautiful people in ways that you can take into your everyday life, tools, techniques, meditation, breath work, and many other things that I want to include to distill all this amazing information. Because at the end of the day, we have all this information, but if we don't do anything with it, what the hell's the point, right? So that's the point of these courses, is to show all these everyday ways that we can take this and improve and enhance our lives, unlock our own superpowers, and just become like the gods of ancient times, essentially, like we're meant to be, in my opinion. So come join us on our community. Brandon always says the 33 cents a day, $9.99 a month. ancientmysteriesunearthed.com. Visit us there. Check out some more of our videos here on YouTube. Check us out on Rumble as well. And thank you so much for watching and listening today. We appreciate you. Brandon, thank you so much for coming on again. I missed you last week, and it was nice.
It's my pleasure, Chris. It's my pleasure. And you know what, to our beautiful audience, it really helps us when you drop a like, when you share that. We are getting so close to 1,000 subscribers. It's building every day. We're just pushing our way towards that. So you know what, if you want to take some ownership over this channel as well and help us grow, we greatly appreciate that. You know, if you are sharing it, if you are liking it, drop a comment on one of our videos, say something interesting. You might win the comment contest for the week and get featured on the episode. We'd love to have you engaged with us on the show. That's what it's all about. We are a community. You know, we fly under this whole conspiracy kind of flag that that the common world throws as a blanket to so many facets of knowledge. But realistically, we try and have just an educational approach, an open mind and an open heart, much like depicting those pictographs. We look at all this information and we love to dissect it in different ways. And we want you to be there with us with an open mind and an open heart. And we just want to say thank you so much. We want you to stay curious. We want you to stay kind. Go do something nice for yourself today. Go do something nice for your friends and your neighbors. And just look at the world with an open mind, because you know what? Change the way you see things, things will change. So those are my thoughts, Chris. Nice to be back, baby.
Yeah, welcome back, my friend. So long, everyone. We'll catch you next time on the next episode of Ancient Mysteries Unearthed Fireside Chats.